Thank you, Sheriff. At this time, the invocation will be held by District 2.
Tonight we have Bill, David is receiving our
Will you bow with me, please? Gracious God, eternal Father, thank you for allowing our eyes to see this beautiful day. Thank you for the blessings of life and for the blessings of this great country, the freedom and the liberties that we enjoy. We're thankful for the sacrifice that's been given for each one of us. It gives us this freedom tonight. We pray your blessings to be with those who are in harm's way this hour, representing us around the world. We would pray that peace could reign in the world and that all could come home. We ask that you be with families that are separated in this time. And we pray, Father, for those who are downtrodden, the less fortunate among us. We pray for this governing body. We ask that you would guide them, and we pray, dear Father, that all of us would do justly, love mercy, and that we would walk humbly before you. This is our prayer through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, if you'll call the roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you take your handsets, please, everybody press yes and stop right there for me, please. Everybody press stop, yes, and just stop right there. All right, now everybody press confirm for me, if you would, please. Everybody press confirm. All right. Works. All right, Mr. Chairman, you have all 24 present. There is a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion and a second? Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Approval of minutes of previous meeting. Do I hear a motion and a second?
Motion's approved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unfinished business and action thereon by the board. Report of standing committees. Planning.
No unfinished business, Mr. Chair.
Physical review.
No unfinished business, Mr. Chairman.
Nominating.
No unfinished business, Mr. Chairman.
Report of special committees. Any other unfinished business? New business and action thereon by the board. Report of standing committees. Planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 1 recommends approval to declare the chain link fencing and gate system and all accessories at the Putnam County Justice Center southeast parking area as surplus, and that it be transferred to the Putnam County Board of Education for Jerry Whitson Elementary School. Board of Education will be responsible for any cost of the moving of the fence, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item B recommends approval to transfer the following vehicles from the Sheriff's Department to the Baxter City Police Department. It's the 99 Ford Vic and a 2001 Ford Vic. You see the VIN numbers, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item C recommends approval of the list of weapons presented by the Sheriff's Department be declared as surplus, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item D, Mr. Chair, recommends approval of the list of vehicles presented by the Sheriff's Department be declared as surplus and sold on governmentdeals.com. There is a list of those vehicles for those of you that wish to see it, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item E recommends approval to change name of Putnam County Planning and Codes Department to Putnam County Building Codes Department, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item F, recommend approval to adopt the 2012 building codes as amended, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Savage.
I'd just like to know what's going to be amended in 2012. I didn't see that. I guess I missed it on the thing. It's dealing with, it is 2009. I guess the main one I was worried about was 2009. Do we have a plan? Because I think you said in 7 or 8 years we have to modify our codes anyway,
Yeah, on residential, it's every 7 years.
every 7 years. So I just want to make sure, because now we're getting ready to go into 15. I'm not saying we need to do that, but I know you said the city of Cookeville is going ahead and doing it.
Yeah, and our plan is that we get to the 12 code and then see what happens when the 15s or the 17s come out, and depending on if they change that back or not, then we'll decide, make a decision then as to whether we'll adopt it or not.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item G recommends approval to close 528 feet of the back portion of Rabbit Ridge Road as requested by the property owner, and recommendation by the road supervisor, Randy Jones. Do understand that the road committee did meet and approve this as well. Am I correct about that? Yes. So, I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And last, Mr. Chair recommends, item H recommends approval of the resolution adopting formal policies and procedures for housing rehabilitation, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And that concludes planning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Atwood. Physical review.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, item A recommends approval of a resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of the interfund loan capital outlay note not to exceed $498,000 for the construction of a countywide fuel system, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you favor the motion, would you take your handsets and vote yes? If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Stop right there. Please don't confirm yet. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now, would you press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen? Everybody press confirm, please. Mr. Chairman, you have 24 voting yes, 0 no, 0 absent. That motion carries. Give me just a second, Mr. Jim. All right, thanks.
Item B recommends approval to stay with the current Blue Cross carrier until June 30th, 2015, and to bid out the health insurance after the first of the year, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Sorry, who seconded that?
believe we can vote on this just with a voice vote, correct, Mr. Clerk?
I think so. We're not necessarily spending over, we're just extending their time.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks.
Item C, recommends approval of the amendment to the Rails with Trails project in Putnam County, so that the project will still be eligible for the $625,000 grant, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? County Exec, Mr. Porter.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of questions. I want to make sure that everybody was clear on what we're doing here. Basically, all you're doing is taking Monterey out. They asked to be removed from the grant. We've got one grant that's $625,000 that if we don't go ahead and get going with this, we're going to lose that grant. I just want to make sure that everybody understands we were committed to this project over 10 years ago. And so if it doesn't pass tonight, if y'all don't pass this, we basically are going to lose $625,000 worth of a grant. Just want to make sure everybody understood that you're not voting to do this. The county commission voted years ago to do this. This is just to allow Monterey to be taken out of the process and leave all good Cookville and Putnam County in. We're already committed to the matches on the grant. That's been done years ago. It's just to let Monterey out. So I want to make sure that everybody understood what you're actually voting on tonight. And if it doesn't pass, and I'm not saying that you got to pass it, that's totally up to you, but we would lose the $625,000 grant.
Any questions? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you favor the motion, would you take your handsets and vote yes? If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote for me, please. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, please press confirm for me if you would, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody press confirm. Mr. Chairman, you have 22 voting yes, 2 no, 0 absent. Motion carries. All right, thank you, Mr. Jim.
Okay, item D, recommends approval to reapply for a community development block grant for February 2015 for fire protection. I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Eversole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The way I understand it is this is, will end up, if we get this grant, about $213,000, but it won't affect this year's budget, it'll be next year's budget. I'm just, and I'm assuming these grants come up all the time, okay? So, based on what we have done with our last budget, where we're put ourselves, our county, in the hole, depending on 1.3 million up to, 4.3 million possible out of fund balance, I think it would be wiser for this commission to postpone applying for this grant until we know, after the dust settles with this budget, and not take any more out of our fund balance, or commit ourselves to taking more out of the fund balance next year until we see exactly where we're at. For that reason, I'm going to vote no on this. And I just think it would be in our county's best interest to do that at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You asked us to ask you questions, so I'm going to direct this at you. There were several different issues that were brought up in this particular breakdown, if you remember, and one of the main things was community need, and that was where we scored lowest. Can you explain that?
Which part was it? I didn't hear that. I'm sorry, Tom.
It was community need. It was, we scored a 32, and it was really what cost us to be the one step below the line, if you will.
Now, that there, how they judge them, I have no idea on that, because I'm not involved in that part.
Is that Michelle that does that?
Yes, sir.
Maybe she could help us understand that. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Atwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My only comment, and I'd certainly hear and agree, Commissioner Eversole, my only comment is that it doesn't hurt us to apply, and that's what we're asking to be done tonight, is just to apply for this grant. Still would have to come back for us to approve and for us to expend any money for it. I think as long as we stay in the process we committed ourselves to some fire protection, and this just is another opportunity. If the grant is available and presents itself to us, we qualify and are approved, that we can make a decision as to whether or not we expend that or not. So for that case, Mr. Epstein, I'm not against you, but I'm going to vote for it because I think we should at least apply for it.
Commissioner Savage.
In response to Commissioner Atwood's comments, I think a lot of the vote will take place tonight, because if we do get the grant, if we apply for it and we get it, are you going to be willing to say no then? If you're not willing to say no now, to say just wait, with conservative estimate, the budget calls for a 4.3 million shortfall. We are a little bit ahead of our numbers, but you know, are we willing to go in the hole again? About $1.5 of this $1 million that we are short, we know is going to be there. It's a recurring expense, and so it's hard. We just passed a budget. We just passed one, item A, 24-0 or 22-2 on C. I'm sorry, on the Rails for Trails, because we committed to it. Not us, but 10 years ago, a group of commissioners committed to it, and just now it passed with flying colors because we've already committed to trying to get that grant. We received it. Now we're going to spend the money. So I don't think that it's harder to say no then than it will be now. So, you know, if we need to wait, $4.3 million in the hole. You know, that's the budget that was given to this commission. I was on the previous commission, so I'll take some responsibility for that. But this new commission, we're starting out $4.3 million in the hole.
He asked me a question, Mr. Chair, if I could answer that. He directed the question to
Yes,
me, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Savage. To answer your question, yes, I would. I don't know about the other 23 members of the commission, but, you know, I make my decisions based upon the circumstances at that time. And it is my contention that we don't know what the circumstances will be at the time that we either get approved. I'd rather have the opportunity, once that's done, to make that decision as to whether or not I feel like it's warranted. We don't know what the revenue income will be. It may be that the taxes are up, that there's you know, shortfall won't exist. I don't know, but I do want to at least give us the ability down the road through the application of it to make that decision. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Alwanazon.
Yes, we've been trying to put out some numbers talking about the 4.3 million shortfall and talking about some of the budget issues that we have. Do we have any numbers in front of us, especially if this grant is approved? Do we have any numbers talking about how maybe where we'll be at with what kind of number figure I should say with regarding this motion here? Randy or anybody have any numbers on that? Oh, sorry. No, we're talking about the shortfall, and especially if we approve of this now, talking about maybe how it'll affect the budget. Do we have any $213,000?
If the grant comes through and you have to match it, $63,000 in a match and roughly $150,000 on the building, I mean, we think we might be able to build it a little cheaper than that, but probably $125,000 to $150,000 for the building, so about $2 to $213,000.
And when would that affect the budget? That'd be
About this time next year. Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you favor the motion, would you take your handsets and vote yes? If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone please vote. Stop right there before you confirm, please. All right, all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now please press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody press confirm. Mr. Chairman, you have 16 voting yes, 8 no, 0 absent. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
Okay. Item E, recommends approval for the Sheriff's Department to enter into a lease agreement with Boswell Harley-Davidson for 2 motorcycles for a period of 2 years, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, sir. Sheriff,
Mr. Martin.
one question.
Mr. Martin.
Would you let Scott and I break those in?
Insurance squared up, I'm good.
All right, I'll accept that answer, thank you.
Commissioner Savage.
You don't have to get up.
I just want to make a comment to the commission again. I want to point out, I know this is within with his budget line item. He's going to move money around to keep it without amendments, but $4.3 million shortfall. Last year, we came in with a large growth of 1.6. Subtract the difference, 2.7. The only way we're going to decrease that 2.7, and I'm not saying he's not being responsible, but I think that our department heads are going to have to work this year along with us. Is this a want? Is it a need? And that's what we have to evaluate on some of these decisions. And I think before we enter into the lease agreement right now, we really have to see how this year is going to progress and realize, is it an actual need or a want? Would it be good for the department? Yes, but is it an actual need? Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk.
To that, I understand, Commissioner, but, you know, when we look at items like this, I look at a very efficient way to patrol the county, and I know it's limited to the spring and summer and fall, but it is a very, very efficient way for the Sheriff's Department to do part of its job.
Commissioner Bennett.
I'd just like to say that, you know, I worked for the Sheriff's Department for almost 21 years, and I just retired in January. And I happen to know from the personal experience that this is an aid to the Sheriff's Department. And yeah, it costs, but it's not outside the budget. And I think if the sheriff says he needs them, I mean, you know, he stated last time his needs and wants, what have you. And I agree with him. And I think we ought to go with it. That's just the way I look at it. But we need all the help we can. With crime the way it is right now, we need all the help we can get. Thank you.
Commissioner Wasson.
Of course, as Commissioner Savage just said, maybe it's regarding whether it's a want or a need. Maybe Sheriff, if you wouldn't mind addressing us real quick on that. Of course, some of us already probably know some of those, but just for information, of course, only 8 of us serve on the, or 12 I should say, serve on the fiscal committee, which is what this was brought to. The other 12 do not have a decision in that, so maybe if you could just maybe approach us about maybe why some of the pros would be for you guys there.
Well, as Commissioner Savage mentioned, you know, it's within the budget. We're not asking for any more money, so we were sort of thinking ahead beforehand. This is not something that came up, but Cookeville City has 6, and they're a very useful tool. You know, it's a high visibility tool in the high crime areas in the neighborhoods. We've got Hog Group coming in. We do the TSSAA football. We got all these events, Fall Fest, and we're part of that anyway. It would be nice to be a part of it the way we should be. And, you know, we're not using these things for just special events. This will be, these cycles will be used for traffic. I get a call just about every day from some road out in the county that somebody's going too fast and speeding and so on and so forth. So they'll be used for all sorts of things to fight crime and within our group. But it's something that I think would really help and represent the Sheriff's Department well. we have the numbers, it's not that much. Harley-Davidson almost just gives you the motorcycles in order to use them. They do that for all over the country. We've already received a grant to equip most of what we're gonna need for the motorcycles. So, yes, they are a good weather tool, but, when we're not using them, then of course the deputies will be in the vehicles and doing other things, in a car, vehicle, but, you know, I can go on and mention, we can talk about parades, we can talk traffic crashes, we can talk about all this other stuff, but, some seem to think it's the number one deterrent in crime when you see a motorcycle coming through a neighborhood or going down the road, and like I said, Cookville City and the highway patrols have been very successful with them. I don't know that we'll ever have, a motorcycle group, but I think, you know, the two that we're asking for will be very helpful.
Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your handsets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote and just stop right there, please. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now would you please press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen? Everybody press confirm. Mr. Chairman, we have 22 voting yes, 2 voting no, 0 absent. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
Okay, thank you. Item F recommends approval of the budget amendment to the county general fund in the amount of $39,926, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Short?
Yes, Jerry, or Mark, one. So especially on the larger grants, these are already included in the budget, as I understand. Is that correct?
Mr. Short. I think he's on the wrong item.
Sorry?
County General Fund.
I'm sorry.
Never mind.
Thank you. Sorry.
You hit the button, I'll let you talk.
Okay.
Help him out, Scott.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. If you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Stop right there. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change it? Wait before you confirm, please. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now, please press confirm for me, if you would, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody press confirm. Mr. Chairman, we have 24 voting yes, 0 no, 0 absent. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
Okay. Item G recommends approval of the budget amendments to the general purpose school fund as presented, and I so move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Short?
Replay. Try that one again. Sorry. Specifically was the larger 400,000, I think it was a LEAP grant.
You know, that's it stands on its own. It's an after-school program that, the fiscal year runs, October 1 through September 30. What would happen if we did not receive that grant, then we would not have those programs. So we do anticipate those. Putnam County, we've had that program for a number of years. It's one of the most successful programs in the state. So we do count on it, but to say that it's specifically in the budget, it's a standalone program. If we don't get the funds, it does not happen.
See, so you didn't have it in the actual budget. So we're, okay.
That's why we're doing, it's in the budget in the sense, we had money that ran through September 30th from the previous grant, but this is the renewal of the grant.
Right, and Sure, I understand that, but then when you go back to the end of the year and you're trying to reconcile back, and your payroll is, because it was almost 80% payroll or something.
Yeah, and this is,
You know, and you're trying to balance that out on the budget, then my question really becomes is, are we comparing apples to apples if the budget doesn't include what's included in the grant? Now, I understand their expenses and income as well, but then maybe the answer or the solution to that is some sort of a listing of grants that are out there so that when we're sitting in budgets, we know what we're looking at in terms of the overall cost.
Well, we provide a grant report every month to the board, with the amount received and the amount that are outgoing and incoming,
To this board or to your board?
to our Board of Education.
Okay.
Yes.
I understand,
And
but
this
we're not
money-
in the market of challenging where you're
No,
spending your
I'm
dollars,
just-
so we're not gonna sit there and nitpick it. It's just a matter of being able to know at the end of a budget year what we're looking at versus what we approved, and
Well, essentially,
that's a large change.
this money also is more or less its own, entity and item. If we did not expend this money, it goes back to the state.
Well, there was more than one, but,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
several-
I'm
most-
just talking in real general terms here.
Most
Jerry,
of these grants, the funds, if they're not expended in the way that the grant is written, at the end of the fiscal year, it goes back to the state or the federal government.
Okay, I think I've made my point. I just think there might be a better way to handle the grants than to just keep throwing them at us, but, okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your handsets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everybody please vote. Stop right there for me, please. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All right, now please press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody please press confirm. Everybody press confirm. There we go. Everybody, Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin.
Oh.
Thank you, brother. All right. Mr. Chairman, we have 24 voting yes. Help him, Scott. All right. 0, 0 no, 0 absent, motion carries. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jim.
Okay. Item H recommends approval for the county exec to apply for a State of Tennessee grant for a sidewalk at the Health Department on County Services Drive, and I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Medley. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your handsets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone please vote. Stop right there for me. Wait before you confirm, please. All votes are now in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Ladies and gentlemen, please press confirm for me if you would. Everybody press confirm. Thank you so much. 24 voting yes, 0 voting no, 0 absent. Motion carries, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Nominating Committee.
Nominate committee met on Monday, October 13th, and approved the following recommendations. A, recommends to consider two of the following to serve on the beer board for a term of 3 years, with the terms expiring October 2017. Terry Randolph, David Gentry, and Larry Bennett. And there's been a lot of questions, I think, about the beer board. Some have called me, and I've tried to, we discussed some of those in the committee meeting. I'd like for Jeff Jones, if he would, to sort of address the beer board, and what we can do and what we can't do.
That's kind of a lawyer answer, it depends. It depends, the statute says, and the statute that you're talking about is if you want to look at it, is it found at Tennessee Code Annotated 57-5-105. Basically what the statute says is that if the county commission chose to do so, you, as an entire body, could operate as a beer board yourself. But it gives you, the commission, the power to establish a beer board. And my understanding is that was what was done in the 60s, in the late 60s. The statute's silent as to the composition of the membership, the number of members that must serve on a beer board or that can serve on a beer board. It's silent as to the issue of fees for your service on the beer board. It's also silent as to whether or not there's any kind of geographic limitations, whether you appoint somebody from the east or the west side of the county. All of that, the statute is silent as to. So, essentially, what needs to be done is the county commission, when it approves the establishment of a beer board, which is a good idea because this is not something that you guys want to be burdened with, all of that needs to be provided for in the resolution that establishes the board. Now, I talked to Mr. Neighbors prior to the meeting tonight. I know I have seen a statute from a couple of commissioners in regards to the fees that were established back in, I think, 67. Is that right, Wayne?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But as far as some of the other questions that I've heard bannered about, as far as the geographic limitations and whether it's a requirement that the membership be composed of only county commissioners, I don't think that I'm familiar with any resolutions like that. Wayne would be more familiar than I.
And myself, Mr. Jones, I don't find that either, and we've done a diligent search, and I don't see any geographical boundaries or any places that need to be representative, north, south, east, and west, or a membership of whatever it says. It must consist of X number of amount of. In 67, when it was originally set up, that was under, when it was the quarterly court, it was set up, that was when Judge Medley presided. There was X number of members, there was fees set for members' meetings as well as the secretary to be paid. Of course, that's 50 years ago. We've come a long ways, since then. So obviously we've itched up with the times. I don't know what a beer application would have been then. Today the application is $250. I'm sure it wasn't that much then. So everything has gone, in upwards. But what you talked about, no, sir, I don't find that.
So essentially, based on what authority is given by the statute, it's up to this county commission to determine the number of members and the makeup. And I think that historically, from what I understand, I know, that the beer board has not been composed of all commissioners in the past. I remember that for several years, Joe Frank Adkins served when he was not on the commission.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Croc.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. That's right. Yeah, Croc Randolph. Right.
I'll be happy to answer any other questions if you got them.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. To this motion, I move approval.
Who seconded that? Mr. Medley, all right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, okay.
What is the motion?
Commissioner Honeycutt.
Yes, this either go to Randy or Jeff Jones. These two that we appoint tonight, is all the terms up at the same time on the beer board? They're not, they stagger
No.
the terms?
They're not. They have different dates.
Oh, okay.
I think there's 3 members that Mr. Medley, Ms. Burrows, and Mr. Ford goes on through 16, I believe. Is that right? September of 16?
Yes, we have, Randolph and Gentry on, expires on, October 14, and Jerry Ford and Mike Medley and Anna Ruth Burrows, their term expires October 2015.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ford.
I just want to point out that, if no one knows what the beer board does, 'cause we don't have a whole lot of people attend to it, but we only meet, this is something that meets once, twice a year at the most, maybe 3 times. We don't have but, how many, Wayne?
Maximum,
15 beer joints?
we have about, we have one filed today, which will make us 17 establishments. That consists of convenience stores and quote-unquote taverns that we would oversee. Right.
Right, and I just want to point out, we just meet whenever somebody puts in for a beer license in the county, and that's usually once or twice a year.
Commissioner Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also wanted to point out that we are open if anybody wants to nominate from the floor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That will be correct. The motion that Mr. Martin made, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Clerk, was just to consider the 3 that's on there.
That is correct.
And we got a motion and a second on that. Now we will open nominations up from the floor. Correct.
Correct. If there is any. If
Is
not,
there any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
as I call your name, would you please give me your 2 selections from these 3 names, please? And then we're selecting from Terry Randolph, David Gentry, and Larry Bennett. All right, so as I call your name, everybody got it? Give me 2. Here we go. Mr. Eversole.
Pass.
Okay. Mr. Shore.
Randolph and Bennett.
Mr. Stevens.
Gentry and Bennett.
Mr. Martin.
Randolph and Gentry.
Mr. Owanazon.
Mr. Gentry and Mr. Bennett.
Mr. Ford.
Mr. Gentry.
Just selecting one. All right. Mr. Bennett.
Gentry, Bennett.
All right. Mr. Robertson.
Gentry, Bennett.
Ms. Adams.
Randolph Bennett.
Mr. Williams.
Gentry, Bennett.
Mr. Shanks.
Gentry, Bennett.
Mr. Savage.
Gentry.
Just doing one. Is that correct? Just select one. All right. Mr. Medley.
Gentry, Bennett.
Mr. Redwine.
Gentry and Bennett.
Mr. Holmes.
Gentry, Bennett.
Mr. Rogers.
Gentry, Bennett.
Mr. Blair.
Randolph, Bennett.
Mr. Young.
Randolph
Mr. Honeycutt.
Gentry, Bennett.
Ms. Bradford.
Randolph Bennett.
Mr. Buttram.
Gentry, Bennett.
Ms. Bowman.
Gentry and Bennett.
Ms. Reel.
Bennett.
That's one. All right. Mr. Atwood. Oh, it absolutely does.
I don't want to make anybody mad. I'll just pass.
That's your prerogative.
I like them all.
All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Mr. Ford?
I want to add my one. I just,
All right. So,
Bennett.
Bennett, all right. Thank you, sir. Any other anybody else want to change? Anybody else want to add that has abstained? Anywhere? All right. my calculations are correct, Mr. Randolph receives 6, Mr. Gentry receives 16, Mr. Bennett receives 20, and 2 chose to abstain. Therefore, Mr. Gentry and Mr. Bennett are elected to the Beer Board. Got an application filed today, so we'll be expecting a letter from me pretty soon. All right. Thank you so much.
Item B, recommends to consider one of the following to serve on the Audit Committee as a citizen. Let me remind you, last week, this was on the agenda, but there was a little bit of confusion on it, and we met, as I said, on the 13th, to clear it up. On this committee, there's 7 members. Among those, you have 3 commissioners. That's the way it's set up, to have 3 commissioners, 2 citizens and 2 CPAs. And last week, Commissioner Atwood asked to take his name off because he, I think, was informed or thought that Bob Duncan was probably one to add back on. He took his name off. So again, going back to the committee on the 13th, the only other item to review and vote on would be the 2 to replace the citizen, and those are John Ludwig and Bob Duncan. And again, this is the citizens portion of it. The other members' term expires June 2016, and this will also be the term for the one of the 2 that you will vote on tonight. And I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any nominations from the floor at this time? Hearing none, Mr. Clerk.
I just
Mr.
have a
Savage,
question.
sorry.
I just have a question. Does that mean Mr. Atwood agrees to serve?
Yes.
Do we not have to vote, at least vote acclamation to get it in our minutes?
Well,
Make
that's
it
what
official.
that's what we're trying to correct tonight.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, all right.
Commissioner Medley.
So what I want to make sure of, so you're telling me that Mr. Atwood is going to run for the commissioners?
Correct.
Is correct?
Correct.
And one of these 2 is running for the community party?
This is the citizens, correct?
Yes, it's,
Strictly, we have 3 commissioners that would be appointed, and 2 citizens and 2 CPAs, and that's the way we set it up.
I just want to make
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
It wasn't in the years.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I don't mind addressing that. I'm more than happy to serve. That wasn't the point. The point was, I thought that Bob Duncan could serve in my spot, and as a CPA, that he would be much more qualified than I to serve. I'm very happy to serve on this, on the audit committee. Come to find out, Bob could not, because he's running as, he's no longer a commissioner. He has to run as a citizen. So, yes, I'm more than happy to serve.
Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as I call your names, would you give me your selection, either Mr. Ludwig or Mr. Duncan? All right, is everybody ready? Just one. Mr. Ebersole?
Duncan.
Mr. Shore? Mr. Stevens? Mr. Martin?
Duncan.
Mr. Wanison?
Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Ford? Mr. Bennett? Mr. Robertson? Ms. Adams?
Duncan.
Mr. Williams?
Duncan.
Mr. Shanks?
Ludwig.
Mr. Savage,
Pass.
Mr. Medley, Mr. Redwine,
Duncan.
Mr. Holmes,
Mr. Ludwig.
Mr. Rogers, Mr. Blair,
Duncan.
Mr. Young, Mr. Honeycutt,
Ludwig.
Ms. Bradford,
Duncan.
Mr. Buttram,
Ludwig.
Ms. Bowman,
Ludwig.
Ms. Reel,
Duncan.
Mr. Atwood.
Pass.
All right. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Either one of you abstain, wish to... If my calculations are correct, Mr. Ludwig receives 8 votes, Mr. Duncan receives 14, 2 abstain. Mr. Duncan is elected to the Audit Committee.
Okay, thank you. Each month, we meet, I'll try to bring you up to date on what's coming up for the next month nomination. And for the month of November, we'll have, we'll need 2 names for the Clean Commission Board of Appeals. This is for the Board of Appeals. So if you have someone that's interested, now these will be non-commissioners. Both names will be for non-commissioners. So we'll bring that up next month. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Report of special committees.
Vote for who? Yes. Yes. Sorry, this takes, if I understand right, this takes care of it from last time, is that right?
It was, if you want to, that's part of the, recommendation that we, concluded on the 13th was for Mike to stand in again as a commissioner because he wasn't sure at that time.
My question is,
Well,
Mr. Jones, could you address this issue for us, please?
Randy and I were just discussing it. Mike, did you resign from the committee, or, I guess the action that thing I was curious about is, are you withdrawing your resignation, or is this being submitted for a new vote?
I would withdraw my resignation, suppose, whatever makes it work the easiest. I don't mind being voted on.
Why don't we just make it clean and you guys vote on it?
it was last month, he was proposed, but he was thinking that, Duncan, in not regard of the citizen, but Duncan as a commissioner, and he wanted to pull his name out of it at that time.
Well, if the committee accepted the resignation, you
Correct.
probably should go ahead and vote on it.
Okay. We will add that to the motion. Yeah. Well, you'll make it. Okay, we have a motion and a second. For Bob, okay, and for Mike Atwood to, retain himself as a commissioner. And I so move.
He's gonna continue to serve on that
Correct.
committee as a commissioner.
As a commissioner, and I so move.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it?
I've got a question.
Get your button.
If he resigned, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Ford.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If Mike resigned off the committee, then would that not open the floor back up for nominations?
He did not resign. He took his name out last time. He didn't resign from, because we were voting on that slate that was recommended by the nominating committee.
Okay. I just want to make sure it's legal.
Any other questions? Everybody understand what's going on? This is just a cleanup from the
It's a cleanup.
resignation. He's withdrawing to stay on.
That's from the last meeting.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Now that I conclude.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Now, back to what we just covered. Report of special committees. Resolutions?
There are no resolutions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Election of notaries.
Pam Ballou, Beverly Bynum, Harold G. Callahan, Tina Michelle Carter, Shirley Cohen, Nicholas Crosby, Kyle Hanna, Jordan E. Harris, Kim Henderson, Amanda R. Holt, Lauren Imes, Donna Kernel, Desiree Mason, Michelle Maynard, John B. Nesbitt III, Amanda D. Norwick, Loretta Qualls, Mark A. Reagan, Greg Rector, Jane G. Sadler, Jara H. Sofier, and Shayna Wilburn. Just messing with you there, Mr. Rector.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have to vote this one by your handset. Would you please take your handsets and if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. I ask you always to please vote yes. It's still an important thing to do, unless you have any kind of feel like a conflict of some time. Mr. Ford, Ms. Bowman. All right. Anyone wants to change their vote anywhere? Please press confirm for me if you would, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody, please press confirm. Everybody press confirm. All right. 24 voting yes, 0 no. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Motion carries. Mr. Chairman? In good shape, Mr. Rector. All right.
Other new business. Ratification of County Executive's appointment of Mike Atwood to the Public Records Commission. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ratification of County Executive Randy Porter's appointments to reestablish the Americans with Disabilities Act Committee as follows. The ADA Coordinator, Debbie Francis. ADA Advisory Committee, Randy Porter, Chairman, Chris Savage. ADA Grievance Committee, Amy Howell, Sandra Shepard, Chris Savage. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Announcements and statements. Anybody got anything? If not, there will be another work session next month after fiscal and planning is through meeting. We will meet here. And hearing nothing else,
That's right. He won't double coverage on me.
and don't forget the picnic.